we had like a week off before our next tour that we did, and we just stayed at Kevin's house and we were like writing and like, you know, just jamming out songs and trying to write for this album. And then, yeah, it was December of 2019, I think. We went to 25th Street. And yeah, like Ben said, I think we did 3 days of like just us tracking it, you know, the core instrumentals live. Like we all just did it together in the same room, which was really awesome.
So on this week of The Record Process, Tom and I enjoy a nice little chat with members of the beloved West Coast funk rock outfit, Just Friends. We go behind the scenes with guitarist Matt Yanko and drummer Ben Donlin to learn about the emotional roller coaster that brought about the band's newest album, Gusher, which was released on September 1st of 2023 via Pure Noise Records. This was the band's first time working with producer Brett Romness at the legendary Barbershop Studios in Hopatcong, New Jersey, and it offered them a refreshing new approach to tracking that in many ways felt long overdue for a band like Just Friends, who are known for their emphasis on the energy of live performances. You'll hear how the time touring on outdoor festivals like Sad Summer helped them to galvanize their vision for the band, and how the infectious spirit of singers Sam and Brianda, as well as some close friends in their Bay Area community, have continued to impact the band's writing across their 4 studio albums since 2013. They are an incredibly talented and genuine group of musicians. I really think you'll resonate with this story, and it's all coming up right now. So let's say you've just finished the latest round of mix revisions, or the last few tracks on a production you've been working on, but you want instant feedback before you go and ship them out. That's where Audio Mover steps in. Their revolutionary technology allows you to stream high-quality audio in real time, making remote collaboration a breeze. And with Audio Mover's Listen To plugin, there's no need for complicated setups or endless file sharing. Simply stream your audio directly from your favorite DAW to anyone, anywhere in the world in real time. And now with their newest plugin, they've made it possible to apply binaural rendering to Dolby Atmos mixes, allowing you to monitor how the spatial audio will sound on Apple Music. Through innovations like this, Audio Movers is leading a revolution in web-based audio transmission and reimagining the way musicians, podcasters, and educators engage with the world around them. So check them out at audiomovers.com and start your free trial today. One of the toughest hurdles for musicians and producers to overcome is recognizing when it's time to let your music go. So stop letting your music sit there on a hard drive waiting for the perfect label scenario to show up. Let DistroKid help you start reaching the fans you deserve right now. There's a reason why DistroKid is the go-to platform for independent musicians across all genres, and it's because they offer seamless and affordable solutions to distribute your music worldwide. Get your tracks on all the most popular streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and so many more in just a few steps. Time is often money, and DistroKid understands that. So they've eliminated long wait times for processing your music in the system. And in fact, they can get your music live in as little as 24 to 48 hours now. The simplicity of the platform and features like automatic revenue splits and YouTube content IDs make distributing your music and collecting payments incredibly simple. DistroKid does not take a percentage of your royalties, and for one low annual fee, you keep 100% of what you own. It's straightforward, transparent, and affordable. So follow the link in our show notes to get 30% off your new DistroKid membership and start letting your music work for you. If you're a solo musician, a singer, a songwriter, or part of a band, you know that the journey does not end once you have that finished master in hand. Building a lasting career around your music requires a lot of additional activities to do things like develop, promote, and ultimately monetize your creative vision. And for those of us that aren't quite doing Taylor Swift level numbers yet, it helps to have a merchandising partner that can meet you where you're at right now. And SmartPunk MFG is a perfect solution for any and all merch manufacturing needs your band might have. From the first note to the final stitch, they have it all covered with whatever you might need. They do screen printing, they do embroidery, stickers, vinyl and CD production, posters, and pretty much everything else under the sun. They are an incredibly comprehensive online merch solution, offering reasonable prices and feasible quantities for bands of all sizes. So go check out some samples of what they can do at smartpunkmfg.com. And when you're ready, just shoot them an email at info@smartpunkmfg.com and mention the record process to get 10% off your first order. So remember, that's Smart Punk MFG, and it's where creativity meets manufacturing excellence. Matt and Ben from Just Friends, thank you for being here, boys. How are we doing?
Doing great today.
Chilling.
I love to hear it. Love to hear it. Y'all have a new record. I mean, let's dive right in, right? Because I love the band. For anybody that has not had the, and I will say, distinct pleasure of experiencing, it's not watching, it's not just listening, it's experiencing Just Friends. It's a party and a half, to say the least. But I'd love you guys to give maybe a little bit of background real quick. Just a quick origin story, Cliff Notes version of the group for anybody that might not be 100% familiar just yet. Give them a little taste as to why they should get familiar and what brings y'all to this new record.
Absolutely. Well, Sam and I met just through like the local music scene in the Dublin, Pleasanton, like Tri-Valley. We're going to like hardcore shows and metalcore shows at Lucky Pizza. And basically a few years later, when I was in school at Santa Barbara, Just Friends was maybe a few months or a year old at that point, but they came down and played at my neighbor's house where I was staying in Santa Barbara. And I also felt like, wow, this is a crazy experience. And their drummer happened to be moving to the Midwest. So the next day, Sam talked to me and found me on campus. And he was like, hey, do you want to join the band? And I was like, yeah, let's do it.
I love that. A serendipitous opening. There's a vacancy brewing. Let me slide right into that. Fantastic play. I love that. So yeah, and also you mentioned, I love this too, because I always forget. Dublin, for any of you listening, is in California in this case. There's a Dublin, California.
Yeah.
That is
not Dublin, Ireland.
Very important, very different, distinctly different vibes. The Just Friends one is, as you will hear upon listening very quickly, representative of a West Coast energy for sure. But great. So, okay. So there's some local scene stuff at play. Talk to us real quick about the record previous to this one and what it felt like making that record, because we like to, compare and contrast in great high school literary fashion, but I think that's because there were a little bit of there's a stepping out with this new record that I think will become apparent when we talk about how you did the previous ones, right?
Definitely. Well, real quick, I want to go back and touch a little bit more on like the history and the lore of the band, because as Ben said, we're all the people in the band, we're all generally from kind of the same, like East Bay suburbs. There was a thriving East Bay hardcore scene in, the mid to late 2000s, early 2010s. There was this pizza place in Dublin, California called Lucky Pizza that Sam was booking shows at when he was like 14. Sam and I played in a band like late high school, right after high school. Long story short, we were in this band and then we kicked him out of the band. And then he went and started a band that he had called Sam Cluss Nation, kind of as like a fuck you guys, you kicked me out of the band.
Hashtag
He had songs and stuff.
Yep.
Hashtag Sam Cluss Nation. So, which then evolved into Just Friends. And it took a year or two for that to really kind of take form. But there was some kind of a shifting lineup. Kids were going off to college and stuff. Ben joined the band. What would that have been, like 2013 or 14?
Yeah.
I remember there was a show, there's a bakery in Berkeley called the Nabalon Bakery. And I was playing in another band at the time. And we played a show with Just Friends in the basement of this bakery. And I remember after that show, I was like, Sam, you have to let me be in this band, please. And then I think I joined the band a couple months after that. But East Bay shit, you know what I mean? It runs deep. The valley runs deep in us all.
Shortly after that, we came across Brianda Goyos, super talented singer. She was with a band called Sweet Peaches, and then we kind of poached her from that band.
I love
ever
that.
Since we've had the Sam and Brond power duo dynamic.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. We would be remiss if we did not mention that that also key player to this all-star lineup, right? Which it really is that way. And actually, what's funny is you talk about that the kind of origin story there, Matt, and it sounds very reminiscent of the high school ska band that myself and some of the Wonder Years members also played in, which was just like this revolving door of like, all right, you're out of here. Okay, who can we get to play sax now? Who's filling in on guitar for this show? Like,
do those songs exist anywhere on the internet? Because I would be curious to hear that.
yes, they do. You can search for Five Iron Frenzy, OC Supertones, Less Than Jake, because they were all of their songs because it was a cover band.
I love it.
That actually Josh and my's like childhood band when we were like 14, 15 got roped into forming the initial rhythm section of for his brother's church talent show. And that is, so that's, I don't know. I wouldn't say that that's responsible for anything Wonder Years related, but it's a checkered past that is only those who have been in a ska band can understand, I think.
Yeah, you really had to pick up the pieces from that one case.
And Tom's going to be muted here.
You really had to pick it up.
Yeah, so the band spawned from the community, just like flat out, like without that community there, it wouldn't be.
100%. Like the first time I remember seeing Sam Kless was, we were probably 15 years old, and there was a hardcore band from, I think they're from San Jose. They're called Lionheart, and I'm pretty sure they're still around. But I remember being at this Lionheart show and just seeing this dude, because Sam, you know what I mean? Sam is a big, boisterous dude with a lot of personality and charisma, but he didn't always look the same. Like when he was a kid, he was this short, little, skinny, like little kid who would always wear like knit sweaters, and he always had like a snow cap or like a beanie or whatever. And so you'd see this little kid with like this long curly hair and this snow cap on, just like fucking absolutely just pitting it up, just like fucking, just moshing harder than anybody. He's just this tiny little kid. And I'll always remember the first time I remember seeing him and being like, that kid is going fucking hard. So definitely like the local music scene where we're from. There was other places too. Like there was shows at my high school. They would use like the multi-purpose room. There was shows at churches in Pleasanton. There was like a temple, like a Jewish like community center thing that I remember seeing shows at in Danville or San Ramon, all sorts of places. The Red House in Walnut Creek. You guys might have played there early on in the Wonder Years, maybe in like 2011 if it was still around.
It might have just missed us, honestly, in terms of that. We might have been playing weird like Fresno house shows with Damnation AD or something, like in a garage.
Which is also a very badass thing and a story for another time if you ever talk to Bart from Mom Jeans.
Yeah. So, and I love you. I appreciate you painting the picture for everybody else, because I think that's also important in kind of like having all of y'all come together. But so then what happened? The band gets together. Talk to me a little bit about getting into the nuts and bolts of like what the band actually is going to be, right? Like the songs, the energy, the overall vibe, right? How did that start coming together? Because obviously it changes and grows with the addition of all of these, these people. So talk to me about that over the next couple of years that kind of led to, the first LP and whatnot.
A lot of it was rooted in like the kind of pop punk and emo stuff that we all grew up listening to, and was obviously, especially in like 2011, 2012, 13, that was like a really booming scene. You know what I mean? Like it was becoming really, really popular really quick. So
business was good. Yeah.
Business was definitely good. The first LP we did was called Rock to the Rhythm. And I think it was mostly Sam wrote all of it. I know Sam and Ben and like probably Chris Palowich, who is that old member of the band who's not in the band anymore.
We wrote it together in Sam's garage, and Sam kind of basically skeletoned out most of it.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that first album was definitely more like kind of pop punk emo tinged, but then there was the horns too. And then we toured on that album a bunch. We did our first DIY US tour in 2015. I think we did like 20 something shows, and it was like everybody else's first DIY tour where we were all extremely broke. We were sleeping in the van or sleeping on floors and playing to 10 people or playing to nobody. A tale as old as time, right? There's a time period where right after that first US tour, I moved away to Philadelphia, and I was still in the band, but a lot of things were happening back at home that I was not necessarily around for. So maybe Ben would be able to offer a little more insight in like the 2016, 2017 era of like DIY roughing it, and when we met Brond and kind of brought her into the fold.
Yeah.
Yeah. At one point, it was just 4 of us. We're used to being a bigger band, but at one point, Sam was playing bass on tour, and it was just me and Obi, Brandon, and Sam. We call it like the core 4. But we've, when we added Braun to the band, kind of everything changed, and we realized we wanted to make music that was a little more in a pop or just like less rooted in the hardcore scene kind of direction. Like, we'll never escape that. But basically, by the time we were writing for the second LP, Nothing But Love, we were trying to make something a little funkier and more like soulful, more R&B, rock-oriented. And that one we also did in Panda Studios, where we recorded Rock to the Rhythm. But we recorded with our friend Ryan Ellery, who was Sam Pura's intern for the first record, and then we worked with them in the other room for the next record and had a whole different experience. It was still really meaningful.
Yeah. Y'all went out, did like the US tour for the first time, right? So you're starting to play some of those early songs on the road. And what I've always loved about y'all as a band and in seeing it evolve, and I think it's interesting here, is like, how do you think, that touring and playing some of those songs live as a group started to influence, by the time you got into the studio for the next record, what was happening? Because I think even on recording, you're listening, like, especially with the new record even, I feel like I'm listening to a band that immediately I just want to be seeing live, or I feel like there's a live energy there. So when did you all start to like have those discussions and say that's kind of where we want to go? We want it to be more upbeat, more groove oriented. Where was that process like in all of that?
Yeah, I think the band has always had this really welcoming energy, like, come be a part of this. When you see us, like, there's less separation between the band and the audience on some kind of level. I think it was more just intuitive that we wanted to be able to connect with more people and do something that more people could appreciate.
Yeah. So expanding the bit of the genre lane, so to speak, quote unquote, if there was one, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And also, like, not myself personally, but a lot of members of this band, grew up playing in jazz band and concert band and marching band and stuff. And there's always been, with as many people as there are in our band and, have been over the years, there's so many different influences. Like, it's not just like pop punk and emo and hardcore and, whatever. Like, the way that I've always kind of described our band, or at least in like the Nothing But Love, like LP2 era, like, I always kind of like thought of us as like a punk rock Tower of Power type thing. We're like, we're like a punk band or whatever at heart, but there's also these like funk and soul and R&B and like pop and like hip hop influences and stuff that are all happening too all at the same time. So I think for LP2, that definitely kind of is where we started to incorporate more elements of that. And also, even in 2014 and 15, like, there was just such a natural chemistry, amongst all the band members, like, playing together. We were all just like very on the same page. And I think that reflects in, the kind of shift in songwriting that happened around that same era.
Yeah. Wow. Honestly, mind-blowingly accurate. How long has this punk rock Tower of Power phrase been floating around in your camp? Because that's a good one. And I think for, well, some people might need to Google Tower of Power depending on their age, I guess. But when they do Google it,
East Bay Legends.
Yeah, but when they do Google it and then listen to Just Friends, they'll be like, oh, that was spot on from Yanko. Holy moly. Yeah. But I really love that too, because y'all started seeing yourself as more than just, the bit of the scene and microcosm that came out of, but then there's also a shared musicality, right? Like, everybody, or a lot of us in Wonder Years too, were all former marching band kids, right? So there was like that rudimentary, sometimes literally discipline from drumline and all baked into all the way through to everything else, but also
nerds.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Yes.
Ben was the drum captain, right?
Wow. Yeah, I was drum major of my marching band. So many of us in Just Friends are products of like high school music education. It's so valuable.
Of course.
I used to go to a music camp in the summer where former members of Tower of Power were involved. So we just kind of always had this.
It's all connected.
Oh, look
thing.
at that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
If for nothing else, I guess maybe there's a way of putting it that landed y'all with this kind of like shared musicality, right? Not everybody in good bands needs to know music theory and have that kind of discipline and background, but a lot of y'all did in this case. So you started out a little further down the line when you're kind of getting in the room and playing together. Is that kind of accurate to say what it felt like?
For sure. I think it was definitely an important factor in just us developing as a band.
Yeah. And it's just been a gradual process of us realizing like what kind of band we can be if we want to, just kind of opening up more.
From talking with a whole bunch of people that come from a similar boat as y'all, there's like a shared commiseration of like going through, like everyone knows what band camp is like. You know what I mean? Everyone knows like running those rudiments up the wall feels like. So you're getting like double baked as far as like having this like really, really cool hardcore scene that y'all were kind of all a part of. And then also all coming from this like marching band background. So zooming up from the second record, take us up through the next couple of years from that.
2018, Nothing But Love comes out. And 2018 kind of marked a shift in the band for us. 2018 is the year that, for those who maybe aren't aware, we're deeply connected with Mom Jeans, the band Mom Jeans. Sam, our singer, who we have been talking about, he's the bass player in Mom Jeans. We did like a really big 2-month long US tour, like kind of 2 legs at the end of 2018 with Mom Jeans. And I think when we were on that tour, we played Kilby Court, and at that show is where we signed our contract with Pure Noise. And we also, I don't know if we signed a deal or whatever, but we started working with Brad Wiseman, our agent, our booking agent. So 2018, we put this album out and we're touring a bunch and we're starting to play bigger shows and we're like getting guarantees and like suddenly like we have a writer and stuff like that. And, it's kind of starting to hit a little bit for us. So 2018, definitely things started changing. 2019, both Just Friends and Mom Jeans were on Sad Summer, that first Sad Summer. That's where I think we met you guys, Casey.
Well, we hung out a lot. Yes. You know what? It wasn't as sad as everybody says it was. It just wasn't. I enjoyed my time.
I've done 3 of them now, and I can say that they're not usually very sad at all.
They're not sad. It's quite the opposite. Yeah. But you guys, and you know what? And I will say too, like it was fun to watch y'all really thrive in that kind of pseudo festival environment as well. It really, it made me a fan of the band and the music and y'all as players. And it really is like an incredibly fun return to a band that you can walk into and just let yourself be entertained by for a half an hour, even if you don't know them. Right. And I think, and sometimes that's a challenge for a lot of bands to do in a live capacity. And I always saw it as a fun thing. And then, so I guess what I'd love to hear from y'all now is, clearly y'all are aware of that, right? You're aware of the presence that you have on stage as performers, both musically and vocally as entertainers. So then after all of this happens, right, you signed to Pure Noise. Where do you decide to take it? What's the logical next step to try to evolve that and mine that strength and skill set even more so? That
Sad Summer was really important for us because, we were playing to sometimes several thousand people. Like that, we played Worcester and there was like probably like 4,000 or 5,000 people watching us. And, we were, I think, the smallest band on that tour, just in terms of like people who knew us. And like, we still, encounter people who come to the shows. Like kids will come out to the show and be like, I saw you on Sad Summer that first year, and I had never heard of you guys and it fucking, blew my mind, or this, that, and the other thing. And like, we got in front of so many people who would never have had an opportunity to listen to us from that tour. It made us realize that we wanted to kind of step out and just make ourselves accessible and maybe try to incorporate sounds that would appeal to a broader audience, which kind of leads into LP3.
Yeah, and things that we grew up loving, like Sam is a huge Red Hot Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters fan. We did a whole Red Hot Chili Peppers cover set at Fest one year, which taught us a lot too. But just, I don't know, we kind of have always been sponges and trying to absorb everything that we listen to. So we recorded our third record, Hella, at 25th Street in Oakland. We only recorded for about 4 or 5 days, so we kind of crammed everything in as fast as we could, and it still came out cool, I think. It was kind of limited by time, which is where we had so much luxury on this latest album that we could spend a month together and actually really dig into things. Not to jump ahead too far.
I mean,
that's perfect.
That's where we're going. We all knew where this was headed for sure. But I love that because, so how much time did you have on that on Hella then? You said how many days?
We tracked live for like 3 days, and then everyone kind of finished everything.
Wow, honestly, round of applause. That's pretty damn good.
It's funny because before we went on Sad Summer in 2019, we recorded a couple of songs at 25th Street. So we did Fever, which is, I think, still to date, like our top streamed and probably most known song. And we also did Stupid in that same session. So I think we did, and we might have did one more that didn't ever end up like seeing the light of day. But we did like a couple songs, and then we did Sad Summer. And then I remember we were working on songs, and then we did a headline tour in the fall of 2019. And then at the time, our bass player, Kevin, he was living in Memphis, and he owned a house there. And I remember after our tour, we had like a week off before our next tour that we did. And we just stayed at Kevin's house, and we were like writing and like, just jamming out songs and trying to write for this album. And then, it was December of 2019, I think. We went to 25th Street, and like Ben said, I think we did 3 days of like just us tracking it, the core instrumentals live. Like we all just did it together in the same room, which was really awesome because 25th Street is absolutely gorgeous studio, and the live room sounds incredible. The drum kit, I don't remember, did we use our drum kit on that, Ben?
Yeah, we used our Tama Superstar.
Yeah, we had a brand new, we still had
Star
it.
Classic.
This beautiful fucking Tama Star Classic kit that was like brand new and sounded awesome. And we just kind of like busted it out really quick. And then I think I went back home because I was still living in Philadelphia at the time, and I went back home, and I think that they recorded like the actual like vocals and like extra overdubs and stuff in another studio. I think maybe it was at Sharkbite. I don't know if you were there for that. I wasn't there for that, but
yeah, I was also living in Colorado at the time.
Yeah, it was just kind of disjointed because people in the band were in different places, and we were experimenting with different sounds. And Brianda, when she joined the band, like she didn't grow up on the same sort of music that we did. Like I think she did a little bit. You know what I mean? Like
she loves like Pierce the Veil and certain bands and shit, but she also grew up with Selena and all this Latin pop. And
me and her like bonded over Bayside. Like I grew up loving Bayside. That was like my favorite band when I was in middle school and high school. But so like there was some common links like that. But then she was also she loves Beyonce and like Kali Uchis and like all sorts of other like pop music and like Latin stuff that I just never really what I mean. It's not necessarily like marketed at me or. It's just a different musical world. So we definitely wanted to incorporate more of that sort of sound, like R&B and soul and pop. And Hella was a bit of an experiment in trying to incorporate more of those sounds. Kind of like how I said earlier, we wanted to expand the sound to maybe appeal to a broader audience. Yeah. Just because we just wanted, we wanted to make music that people like. Like, it doesn't matter what genre it is. Like, it doesn't have to be pop punk or emo or whatever. Like, we're a band, and I like to think that we're pretty good. And I know that we're all talented enough to do whatever we want to do. And that's what we tried to do on Hella. And I think we accomplished it. Like, I think that album sounds great, but perhaps it's a little bit disjointed.
I think it led the way to what we're doing now.
Definitely. And so, like I said, we recorded that at the end of 2019, and we were finishing it into early 2020. 2020, obviously, everybody knows what happens. Mm-hmm. We were on another really long tour with Prince Daddy and Oso Oso, and we got 2 days into that tour, and then everybody went home. And our album was supposed to come out, I think, while we were on that tour in like March of 2020, and then it ended up getting shelved. When did Hella come out? Did it come out in 2022?
Shit.
Yeah, March 4th, 2022.
So 2 years, wow.
Because of COVID, the album got shelved forever. And so much happened during those couple years. We kind of went separate ways with some people who were in the band and, producers that we were working with, and just so much shifted. The future of the band was kind of uncertain for a while. Like I remember there was a period where, Brond called me on the phone. She was like, I don't really know if I want to do this. And I was like, well, we're at a point now where if you're not here, there's no, like there's no Just Friends without you. Like that's just at the point that we're at with this band, where it's like, the dynamic and the power that comes from these two front people like working in unison, where you got Sam and you've got Brond, and they're on totally opposite ends of the spectrum, but the chemistry and just the vibe is so right with the two of them. We could never be a band without both of them, you know? So 2020 was rough. 2021 was rough. And then our first tour back from COVID was the Pure Noise tour. And that was Stay Champs, 4 Years Strong, Real Friends, Just Friends. That was a funny bit on the tour. And Bearings is where we met Bearings, and we're about to go on tour with them in a couple weeks. So we're really excited for that.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
If you're listening to this show, I'm guessing there's a good chance that you're the type of person that appreciates the time and effort that goes into something meaningful, something lasting, and something that tells the world exactly who you are. Well, Brett and Dave, the co-founders of our sponsor, Oxford Pennant, share that very same appreciation. They've made it easier than ever to elevate any space in your life and express your style with their meticulously crafted American-made pennants. From classic designs to customized creations, each piece is a work of art. It's quality you can feel and a statement that truly lasts a lifetime. I recently had the pleasure of touring their Buffalo-based shop where they tirelessly make each piece by hand. And honestly, their process really is an inspiring fusion of passion and precision. So go make your mark, celebrate your story, and discover the epitome of timeless craftsmanship and personalized expression by visiting oxfordpennant.com today. So you had a couple tough conversations, right? Like a lot of the uncertainty meter was was pinging, right? The needle was dimed on that for everybody, but for you guys as well. But yes, you're right. It's like you had established at that point this vision, right? And a really strong, very compelling like band narrative and dynamic, right? That people are like, this is now what people, when they think of Just Friends, think of, right? So through all of that, at what point did you start talking about the next record and, coming out of that for touring, and how did that plan get put into place? And what did that plan look like based on what you knew and the conversations and shakeups that had happened over COVID?
I remember there was a couple times like during 2020, because I moved back to California in October of 2020. I was still living on the East Coast. I was like with my family for a while. They moved to Texas. I was with them. And then I was just like, I'm going to go live on the couch at Sam and Joel's house. And I remember, we were still trying to, write music because there was nothing else to do. Like all I was doing was just playing guitar and cooking and like watching TV. We were working on songs and, we would send stuff back and forth. And we had like a Google Drive and stuff. And we would kind of send demo ideas. And I remember there was one day where it was me and Sam and Kevin and Brandon. And they came over to the house that we were living at. And like, we all set up in separate corners of the room or whatever, social distancing and stuff. And we were just kind of hashing out songs. And a couple of those, I honestly can't even remember what songs it was we were working on, but I think a couple of those ended up becoming songs or kind of skeletons of songs that ended up on Gusher on the new album. And also I was playing a lot of acoustic guitar, and I came up with this guitar riff, and then Joel, our manager, who we were living with at the time as well, I remember me and Sam went to go get bagels one morning, and I had this like garage band session open with this guitar riff. And then, in the 30 minutes we were gone, Joel was just sitting there on like loop record with a microphone, just like mumbling lyrics and like hooks and stuff. And he came up with this thing. It was like, be around it. And then he had like 30, like, there was like 30 like different like takes or whatever. We were just listening to all of them. And we heard this one thing where he's like, something better to be around. And then Sam was like, yo, like, that's good. And then we kind of just worked on that. And he had like this hook and this melody idea. And then I ended up like kind of changing the guitar riff. So it was arpeggiated. And then that song ended up turning into Better to Be Around, which is one of the singles that we put out a couple weeks ago. It's just funny how, that's a song I was working on 2.5, 3 years ago. Like the original foundation of it just happened so long ago. I think there was a lot of songs kind of like that where we were just messing around trying to come up with ideas, and then they just sit in the voice memos, and then we kind of come back once we started like getting together and jamming again, and Ben moved back to California, and we could kind of like actually be a band again. We started looking at some of the stuff that we had kind of amassed and being like, all right, what in this is actually good? Like, what can we actually work with here?
You had the stew going, and you were just refining based off of like the experiences that you've had. And yeah, that's great. I love those little voice memo gems. Those are great.
In that moment with Better to Be Around, or how that kind of the twist came about, how was that? Was he like doing takes over top of it, like seriously, or was it just like, I'm going to leave this here and play around with it? Because I feel like there's a kind of magic, and especially I feel like you guys have probably benefited from this so many times over the years, where if you don't hold something too tightly or take something too seriously, that's sometimes when like the gold comes, just like you described. So was that meant to be a joke, or was it, was it in earnest?
I don't think it was meant to be a joke, but Joel's the type of person where he, like, I remember maybe last year, he was doing a thing where he would just write a song every day. And Joel, he's not in the band, but he's a very, very close friend and associate of ours, and an influence on all of us. And just watching that guy work, and his brain also is wired in a totally different way than anybody else I've ever known. And just his capacity for creativity is like, has no bounds. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think he was just trying to have fun. But then there was one little bit out of all this stuff where, some of it was cool and some of it was goofy or whatever. But there was one little bit that was just like, that's it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just like this little stroke of genius that like pops its head out.
I love that. And sometimes it's about recognizing that and grabbing it while it's there. You know what I mean? Instead of just letting it pass by. That's awesome. So you're in this mode, right? So you've started to write some of these songs. At what point do you make the decision as far as what the recording process, location, collaborators, all of that is going to look like? Because there were some serious changes for y'all on this record than in records past.
For sure.
I think after some of the ideas had started to come together and I had moved back to California, we got a practice space together, and it was kind of like we drifted apart for a few years, and we sort of needed to like just talk and like come together again. And then just playing together in a room again was so exciting that it was just a really good time for us creatively. And then after Mom Jeans had recorded with Brett for their album Sweet Tooth, we were really excited about how that album had come out, and they were stoked on how the process worked for them and everything. And it's been kind of a thing where Sam is doing things with Mom Jeans, and then we'll kind of bring stuff to us too, like, oh, we should think about doing that as well. So just based on how good of an experience they had, we were like, this seems like a good way to do it. We could do it at home, but then everyone's going to be going home every night, and we're not going to be like in this thing together as much as if we go on this pilgrimage to New Jersey and do it together for a month.
Yeah.
We were like, let's just fucking commit.
Good old Hop at Kong, New Jersey. Wonder Years, we decided to go to Southern California for a month and all stay together on the beach. You guys picked Hop at Kong, New Jersey, but there is a good reason for that. In January, yes.
Wow.
On a lake. So yes, and we've talked, as I mentioned, a couple records, and Tom and I are very familiar and very fond of the barbershop there in Hop at Kong, New Jersey. And Brett, who produced the record. But tell everybody, because we talked a little bit about actually with recently, what's I guess the most recent episode that we did was probably the Mulligan record, Hot Mulligan. Yeah. We talked about their experience working with him at the barbershop, but everybody's experience might be a little different. So we gave some people, you should also, we'll point to that in the show notes too, if anybody wants to hear even more about the space itself. But I'm curious, what was the setup for y'all? Because in this case, that y'all have mentioned that you're a very tight-knit group as far as players go, right? That you've done marathon sessions of tracking instrumentals, live together. What was the process when you sat down with Brett and said, okay, how are we going to attack this album? Did you want to do that, or was there some other kind of master plan that kind of unraveled when you got talking to him?
So we went into the session with a couple of songs like pretty fully like worked out, and like structured, and I think pretty much all of the songs still needed like lyrics written, but several of the songs we kind of had hashed out pretty good. And then other songs we literally just had ideas and, maybe like a hook or maybe like a riff, and we kind of wanted to, vibes or whatever. And we kind of wanted to just like workshop them. So we had a Google Drive just full of recordings of us in our practice space, like jamming out songs. And some of these voice memos would be like 15 minutes long of us just jamming, like just going A section, B section, A section, C section, you know what I mean? Like just jamming different stuff. And I remember we sent it to Brett. So he had that at least. And then I think the first day we were there, we maybe listened to a couple things and it was just like, all right, well, where do you want to start? We literally just jumped right into it. And, you know, he had a drum kit set up in the live room. And I think there was some guitar amps. The first, I think 3 or 4 days, Brandon wasn't there yet because he had some family stuff going on. So I was the only guitar player there. OV also wasn't there yet. So we didn't have like horns or percussion or anything. So we kind of just had a little bit of a stripped down band. So, you know, we kind of just went in and I think I maybe like DI'd guitar and I brought my Helix with me and just, I think plugged that in, just pulled my live patch up and kind of just like sent it. And Ben, you know, went in and the drum kit was there already. I think they maybe sat and tried a couple snares or something. We just went into it and just started tracking.
Sam and Brett had talked more before recording. I didn't really get to talk to Brett a lot before we went into it. And then we just kind of went in with no preconceived notions. Brett had this 70s or 80s Gresh broadcaster kit set up. And he was like, oh, so you didn't bring anything? And I was like, no, I just, you know, let's just try things out. He was like, okay, I'm going to throw these cymbals on. And then we just like went for it and started recording Love Bug, one of the tracks on Gusher. So basically the process every day, we just come in and start a new song and jam everything out together until we were like, okay, this is what the form is. We know how many bars of each section. We know the form now. Let's just start tracking. Yeah, so everyone would just play live with me while I recorded drums. Then after we felt good about the drums, everyone would start tracking their parts over it.
Yeah.
But it was a really, really organic musical process.
That's probably super important, especially for you, Ben, just to get the feel of the rest of your team around you in that way, right? Obviously, you tracked live all together before, but even sometimes, yeah, it's like, I think getting the best performances, especially to pull out that pocket that the whole band has as its own organism. It can feel really hard to do that as a drummer if you're just trying to do it to stock scratch tracks and there's no response and interaction. So I'm glad you mentioned that you all kind of, you took one song a day too, instead of trying to plow through, you know, drums for an entire record over like 2 to 3 days, which can be extremely daunting. And sometimes, as you said, maybe a little bit less musical in feeling, right?
Yeah.
We've done it that way before too, where it's just like you do it all the drums at once and then you go and do the bass and then you go and do the guitar and, you know.
Yeah. It's not my preferred way of working for sure. It's just nice being able to sit into a song for a while and really feel it out. And yeah, like you said, feeling it in relation to the other members of the band was something we talked about with Brett too, is we don't want to just like quantize everything because everything is in relation to our way of experiencing the time or perceiving time. So we really wanted to keep that human element and feel like a band, not just like this has to be the perfect take.
I don't think I've ever worked with a producer and engineer who is a drummer, you know, because Brett is a drummer, like, and not to put words in your mouth, but I feel like that must have been a really gratifying experience for you because, you know, I feel like it's not often that you get to go to a studio and the guy who's producing your album can connect with you on a level that like only another drummer could connect with.
Absolutely. It was super fun working with Brett, and he was also really cognizant of him being like, he was like very adamant that we generate everything ourselves. And yeah, we can talk about, you know, maybe what this part should sound like, but let's kind of just leave it up to the musician to actually play something that feels right.
Yeah. Yeah. As a drummer, he's not being like, all right, cool. Let me get behind the kit. I'll just do it. Right. He's like,
yeah, no, not at all. Never.
Which, you know, you could do that, but also I think that's a really great thing to remember that like as a producer and like a multi-instrumentalist, it can be very easy to be like, okay, I know exactly what I want to hear. I think let me go and do it. But then if you do that too many times, you're no longer making the band's record. You're kind of just making your record with the band's songs, you know, like, and I think there is a decided difference. And I think the really, really talented, really mindful producers are obviously trying to do what it seems like Brett did with y'all, which is say at the end of the day, whatever it is, it's going to be stuff that is coming from you guys. So maybe we'll throw out an idea, but I want it to be filtered through the lens of just friends as a collection of musicians. And I think that's really important. That's how you get the essence of a band out of a band on record, instead of just having a band write songs or somebody write songs and then having certain musicians. Otherwise, it's just, you might as well just hire session musicians to just, play down sheet music. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which can work for Nashville style stuff and songwriting. But I think a band like y'all, it's got to feel like what it looks like and sounds like on stage. It's got to be there.
With like Brett's gentle producing in that aspect,
what
were
That's a good way to put
there
it.
harder influences of Brett that came through on Just Friends? Like, was there like a part where he's like, let's not do it there, let's do it here, and like flip it around or anything like that like made a song for you, I guess?
There were definitely points where we're working on forms and Brett was like, okay, what if we try this instead? And I think I can convince you guys that you actually like this more. And we try it, and most of the time we would be like, okay, yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, there's definitely moments where he was like, you guys hear this as the chorus, but this is actually the verse.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? And he's like, no, try it. Just like, hear me out on this. If you hate it, we can go back, no problem. But just like, I think you guys might want to try this. And then we do it, and it would be like, you're a genius.
Is there a particular song that happened on this record?
I can't point to any in the moment, because so many of the songs were kind of just ideas or vibes, like in the beginning when we went into it. And, he was able to sit there and kind of put the puzzle pieces together and like rearrange stuff like in his head and like be like, okay, well, let's do this. And it's just at the point now where it's like, I've listened to the album so many times now. It's just like that's how I just know it now.
And that's such a great sign.
Yeah. Like, we actually put out a song today called Jump that I think was heavily influenced by Brett. And, he helped us really like kind of arrange it. And there's like 4 or 5 guitar parts happening during the chorus. And I know, we were like, all right, well, here's like this part and we have this part. And he's like, all right, well, maybe we need another texture here. Maybe we need to like put this like bass envelope filter on the guitar and like have this be like, a counter melody line that's happening. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of moments like that.
Amazing. Yeah. Ben, as far as like for you as the drummer, were there any like parts that like through the process with Brett, like unlocked the song for you, or a song on the record?
Honestly, kind of all of them. It was just like a gradual building process where we try a take and then talk about it. Okay, what worked? What do we need to kind of think about for the next one? But I'd say, as far as like a specific song, I think Jump really was one that Brett helped us put together, where we were like, we have a kind of energy and a sort of space that we want to be in, but we don't exactly know how to build this thing from beginning to end.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that one was just kind of challenging because it's such a different style for us, and it's more of like a dance or like almost like disco feel, which is something we've never really done. So Brett kind of helped us convince ourselves that we could do it.
That song, yeah, it definitely stands out, and in a really cool, interesting, like kind of pop centric forward way. But it's not always as easy to figure out the natural and or authentic evolution of a track like that for your band right off the bat. An outside influence that might have a different relationship or be less internally biased at, like a band member just naturally is, whether we like it or not, right? I think is really effective. And that's awesome. And it speaks to the courage of a band willing to go in to a studio with, with songs that are unfinished, you know what I mean? And willing to extend that extra bit of trust to say, hey, we're not just coming in here with a record that top to bottom, every note's here. We know it's great. Okay, we'll let you give a little bit of feedback, but we know this is it. These are the 12 songs, whatever it is, versus we have ideas. We have a space we want to live in. We have a vibe. We have a loop. We have a groove that we think is really strong. We just need to know what other pieces we need to surround it with. And that is awesome. And I think speaks volumes about y'all as musicians, that you can do that and rely on yourselves to say, hey, if we need to workshop something or rewrite something, we can do it and track it immediately. That's not always something that's easy, especially when you're in the studio. Sometimes people hit that big red record button and all of a sudden you're like, where has the last decade and a half of my chops gone? You know, it can be a mind fuck, right? But so that's, you know, and that speaks to having that malleability and flexibility to say, okay, let's workshop this. Let's write a completely different part. For a drummer, especially, that's really hard. You got to be in there. If you're like, hey, let's workshop this fill that's the complete antithesis of the movement you were originally doing, but is cool and we like it. Okay, great. Now execute it. You know,
now make it feel like you've been playing it for like 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. So that all speaks in volumes. And I love that you guys, you know, I didn't know that about this and specifically this record, but even listening to it, it came out sounding incredibly intentional and cohesive, which is awesome. Right. So I appreciate you all sharing that with us and with everybody else. Go listen to this record if you have not, and the rest of the discography for that matter, now understanding where it all fits in to the history of the band. And where can anybody else, Matt, Ben, find you two specifically and all things Just Friends for that matter on the rest of the interwebs?
You can find us on Instagram at JF Crew Fan Club or our TikTok. And I'm on Instagram at Ben Donlin. But yeah, we got our website too, jfcrewfanclub.com. You can sign up for the email list if you want to follow all things Just Friends.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Matt Yanko. I have a TikTok where I post a lot of guitar stuff, which I think is Matt Yanko 666.
All hail.
Hell yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, we'll obviously drop all that stuff in the notes that accompany this show, of course. And we once again appreciate you guys for being with us and unpacking all of that. It was fun to learn a little bit extra about y'all, and I'm excited for our paths to cross, hopefully in the future, and see y'all play this record live because it is rad.
I hope so too. We're super excited. You know, something that you said earlier on where it was like, you know, people are like, oh, you have to see this band live. I feel like this is really kind of the first time that we've put out an album that truly encapsulates like who we all are as a band and like what we sound like, and kind of all of the influences I think show themselves in the most authentic way that we've, you know, presented yet. So we're all really excited. We appreciate you guys having us on, giving us an opportunity to talk a little bit about it.
Of course.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
As you should be. You should be very excited. I think I think you have reached that ascension of baking everything in, you know, that and harnessing it all, which is a really exciting moment for a band. Super excited. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the upcoming tour and everything along with it. And we will chat with you soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Listen, not only should you go digest this record, but you should immediately take a look at their tour dates. Because as we talked about in this episode, I think there's really just an incredibly infectious spirit that you get wrapped up in when you watch this band perform these songs live. And I think that was so important to their journey through each studio album. They spent a lot of time workshopping their performances on stage and internalizing the feedback that audiences gave them. And that feedback is what ultimately informs the creative decisions that they make when they step into the studio to create again. They are looking for ways to build upon that live chemistry amongst themselves and the reaction that it elicits from their audience. And that's what helps them continue to craft their identity across a number of studio albums. And ultimately, this band is more than just a group of musicians and a group of players. It is its own living, breathing, and evolving organism with one unified goal in mind. And that goal has been refined over time, but at its core, it is to move audiences and offer something that listeners can respond to, not only emotionally, but physically. So how does this idea apply to your own career? What are you hoping to give your listeners through the sum of all your previous work and everything that you have yet to put out into the world? Because each song, each album is just a single frame, a single snapshot of the final movie. Much like this episode was just a single snapshot of the full season that still lies ahead right here on
The Record Process.